Last time in my Multicrafter's Handbook series, we looked at the 5 best things about being into all the crafts. I loved seeing all of you talented multicrafters coming out of the woodwork in the comments and sharing what you love about our kind of chaotic approach to making stuff. But let's face it, it is sadly not all rainbows and kittens. So today, yep, you already read the title of this video, it's the 5 worst things about being a multicraftual maker. If you're new here today, hello, my name is Michelle and I'm a proud multicrafter who loves to make all kinds of things. On this channel you'll find project vlogs, tutorials, free patterns and general craft waffle. So why not hang around for those and in the meantime enjoy this round of us complaining about the consequences of our own life choices. You can always head back and watch that previous video first, I'll link it down in the description and up here somewhere, or just start with this one, I don't know. I'm not your mum. Okay, reason number 1 that being a multicrafter actually kind of sucks sometimes. Stretched resources. I've put this one first in the list because it is no news to anyone and was a really common suggestion in the comments last time. It could be a lack of money for all the different supplies you need, a lack of space to keep them in, or it could just be a lack of time, leaving you with a mountain of unfinished projects that brings you deep, deep shame whenever somebody draws your attention to it. In fact, cancel that previous sentence because most likely it is a combination of all 3. If you've been watching me for a while, you probably know I don't personally have that much of a craft budget right now, which admittedly made the choice of starting a craft-focused YouTube channel a little bit suspect, but never mind that. Trying to decide which project in which craft deserves your precious funds this month is no fun. And that's before we even get to things like social media, where it seems like some people just have infinite funds. Even if you can afford to buy all the supplies you want, do you have enough space to keep them in? How do you decide which stash to prioritise when your brain is constantly screaming, collect all the things? And then say you make it past that hurdle. Say you are really well off and you live in a mansion and maybe you're even retired so you have the most amount of free time it's possible for a human to ever have. It still won't be enough. Every craft is full of inspiration. There are so many beautiful patterns and projects that you would just love to do, but they take time, which is the one resource we are all limited on. Don't get me wrong, this is the epitome of a first world problem, I'm totally aware. But when you lay it all out like that, it is a bit of a downer. Luckily there are ways to make the most of whatever resources you happen to have, and over the years, through necessity, I have picked up a few tips and tricks to that effect. Why don't we make that a separate video? Hang on. Don't mind me, I'm just writing that down. Number 2, you will be a jack of all trades, a master of none. First up, I'm just going to say, no regrets. Variety is fun, but you can't ignore that it does come with some serious downsides. A specialist needle felter, say, is going to spend all of their time improving, practicing and learning new techniques, tackling bigger or more complicated projects, and just generally getting faster at the processes that they do over and over again. And then you have someone like me, who needle felted one ghost and then styled herself an expert and filmed a whole tutorial on it. Self-burn. On a similar note, guess how many biscornus I designed or even sewn together ever before filming this video? If you answered 0, you are spot on. Basically, my approach is to get a good enough understanding of a new craft or a new technique, practice it a little bit just to make sure I've got it down, and then move on. Not because I'm fundamentally opposed to actually getting good at things, good enough is usually all I have time for, and also, for want of a better term, it is usually good enough. There is a certain amount of imposter syndrome that comes from this though. For example, I can obviously cross-stitch. Anyone can basically cross-stitch. I don't think you'll be too mad at me for saying that it's more of an exercise in patience than actual skill. But even there, people who spend all of their free time stitching are going to be so much better. They know all of the technical terms that I never really bothered to learn. The back of their work is probably not a jumbled nightmare like mine. And their stitches look good, even when you are closer than 3 feet. They're actually a little bit intimidating sometimes. So yes, there are definitely differing opinions on how good you need to be at something before it's worth showing off, before you're good enough to teach somebody else how to do it, or even sometimes before you should call yourself a member of a certain community. But personally, I reject all of that, because otherwise I would never hit those arbitrary criteria. Jack of all trades and proud. Number 3, decision paralysis. Amy, the Enlightened Flamingo, and the recently rebranded Winter Nightmare both mentioned this in the comments of the last video, and it's not something that I usually suffer from, but it definitely does happen. Seriously, I was looking back at these comments like, who is that? What? Oh, I see you. You're sitting there on a Sunday afternoon, right? Your chores are done, you've got nowhere to be, your other half is forcibly breeding chocobos in Final Fantasy VII as part of a wider eugenics program, and you think to yourself, now would be a great time to get some crafting done. And then you sit. And you sit. And it turns out you have so many projects on the go that you can't decide which to start with, and you just don't. Yes, it's the well-documented paradox of choice, bane of user experience designers, and apparently multicrafters everywhere. But don't worry, because this one is not just a complaint. I come bearing coping strategies. Yes, you are going to need some kind of system. Don't shake your head at me, this is for your own good. Your first option is to figure out which projects make sense in which situation, so you've always got a more narrowed down list to choose from. For example, with most knitting projects, I can work on them without even looking at my hands, so if we're watching something with subtitles on, that's a great choice. In terms of cross-stitch, I don't really struggle with stitching in artificial light like a lot of people do, except where this obnoxiously blue fabric is concerned, in which case I really need daylight. So you can see this helps to instantly narrow down choices based on context. Doing this work up front means that next time I'm sitting on the couch listening to chocobos get freaky over and over again, all I have to do is look over at the list and pick out a project that makes sense. But of course, most people aren't quite as, structured? Shall we say as structured as me? So in that case, you need a decision wheel. You can see on my phone here, I have this random decision wheel app. I'll link it in the description, but I'm gonna guess they're probably all the same. I have each of my main craft groups on there for if I'm feeling really indecisive. I have yarn, cross stitch, because obviously art, which I made a New Year's resolution to learn how to do, but have kind of been slacking. And then other, which in my case is things like needle felting, sewing, making those purple dice that I promised my friend Harry for Christmas. Yeah. So a quick spin of the wheel and either I'll do exactly what it tells me or I'll have a bit of a temper tantrum and realise that actually I did have a preference after all. If that's too top level, you can always narrow it down further. For example, I have a second wheel. If it lands on cross stitch, I then spin this second wheel to find out which project I should be getting on with, because I just have way too many on the go at any one time. I think a lot of you can relate. So yeah, decision wheel apps. Sounds ridiculous? Works a treat. Number 4. People assuming you are some kind of genius. I laughed so hard in the comments section of the last video when Teresa from Lost My Thread went off on one about this. It is so true, I complain about it all the time, and it makes conversations with my own mother excruciating. As crafters, we naturally want to spread the joy of making stuff, but some people are just determined to see it as this unreachable wizardry. You'll start to hear phrases like, "Oh, you're so clever," or "I could never make anything like that," from people who insist they would actually love to learn but are just somehow incapable. So you'll swallow your frustration and you'll explain to them that actually with the amount of tutorials and even real-life classes available these days, they can learn anything they want. Maybe you'll get overexcited and even offered to teach them yourself. But it'll be met more often than not with a denial that sometimes is because they were just being polite and they didn't want to learn and you were just being really intense, and the rest of the time is because they genuinely don't think they could possibly ever do it. Honestly, I don't know which one's worse. Actually, that's not true at all. I know which one's worst. It's neither of those two. It's, "This is too hard, can you just make me one instead?" It's basically the same curse as working with anything techie, where a job like web designer suddenly means you are qualified to fix somebody's printer. Except now it's that knitting yourself a hat means that you should totally want to make your cousin a king-size quilt, and oh, by the way, she needs it next week. Okay, you know what? I'm going off track there and I'm getting a bit het up just thinking about it. So maybe people asking you to make them all kinds of stuff that they can't be bothered to learn to make themselves is item 4.5 on the list. Honestly though, if you are sitting there watching this and there's any of the crafts I have ever tried on this channel that you think you would like to learn, but you feel like you can't for whatever reason, A, you probably can, and B, leave a comment or send me a DM or something, because genuinely, if you are serious, I will totally help. Oh, and C, unless you're on a really, really exclusive list, then no, I will not just make you one. Sorry. Number 5. Being into all kinds of crafts can paradoxically make it harder to find your people. We ended the list of the best things about being a multicrafter with a note on how easy it is to meet and bond with people from all walks of life, both locally at in-person craft groups and of course online with people from all around the world. At the same time though, it can make it harder to really become part of a community. Most local craft groups are going to be focused on one craft, which totally makes sense. But it does mean if you don't always have a project in that craft on the go, or maybe it competes with other groups that you also want to go to and you can't make it every week, it's just going to take you longer to become really part of the gang. Online can really be an issue too. Obviously on Instagram and now on YouTube and occasionally TikTok, I cover quite a range of crafts. No. And sometimes I'll even post about personal goings on because I'm a person with goings on. Almost every time I post a picture of something other than one of my core crafts, I lose followers on Instagram. Just last week when I posted a learn to crochet video on this channel, I lost a handful of subscribers over and above the usual bot fluctuations. Basically what I'm saying here is some people are really not interested in variety, and that's fine. Sometimes they're a bit weird about it though. I got an Instagram DM last year sometime telling me that they felt forced to unfollow me, that I needed to focus and stop messing about. There's a lot to unpack there, right? Most people are a little more normal than that though. I follow and interact with so many people in all of my crafts and I love it and it's wonderful, but I don't necessarily expect most people to reciprocate because my interests are just all over the place. Finding those people who are also interested in all the things takes time and it's a bit of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But it is totally worth it because you lot are awesome. So those are my top 5.5 downsides of being a multicrafter. What do you think? Do you have anything else to add to the list? Do you feel a bit personally attacked by item 4? Are you installing a decision wheel app on your phone as we speak? And can you tell I wrote the bullet points for this video while I was in kind of a bad mood? A bit of venting never hurt, am I right? I do hope I've not turned anyone away from the fun of a multicrafter lifestyle because it genuinely is worth it. But yeah, sometimes you find yourself looking at a specialist and just thinking, that could have been me if I stuck in at school. Right, I will be back next week with a crafter's log update, assuming nothing else comes up. And in fact, I better go and make sure I've got some progress to show you in that. So in the meantime, have a brilliant rest of your day and keep making cool stuff. Bye!